You can't stop me now. Can't stop me now. My feet have come too far for you to tie them to the ground. You can't stop me now. Can't stop me now. Set my sights on where I'm going at and turn it back around. You can't stop me.
Well, good evening and welcome to Psych Coffee Shop. I'm Aeson Knight. Of course, with me tonight, we've got the Techy Joe in the house. How are you, darling?
I'm doing great. How are you this evening?
All being halfway evil, almost totally controllative, and possibly psychotic. Hello, Shannon. How are you?
So Tuesday.
Tuesday.
Hi, Shannon. Oh,
So tonight's going to be a fun night. Brenda, nice to see you in the house.
Brenda.
Oh, yeah, because this is a Hot Topics night.
It is. We do not have an author. I think it's been a while.
It's been a few days, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They get all Aeson all the time.
Yeah, well, you get Aeson all the time. You know, some people envy you, some people think you're cursed, but, you know, that's totally up to them.
You know.
Yeah. But
fun. So it's been a fun week in news.
it has been. You know, we got a developing situation in Houston. I want to know what in Tiger King is going on here.
I know, right?
Like, is Carol Baskin in Houston trying to get rid of her latest husband?
So a man in Houston was housing a Bengal tiger in his yard. They've arrested, as I understand, Victor Hugo Cuevas, 26.
Well, he was already out on bail.
He was out on bond for a prior murder charge.
Mm-hmm.
When neighbors spotted a tiger in his front yard.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's just...
That's a little much.
But yeah, apparently he also has monkeys. The monkeys are legal. The tiger is not. Can't have a tiger. Well, technically it's legal in Texas with certain
but not in Houston. Houston does not allow for tigers or monkeys.
Yeah. Yeah. Apparently scared the neighbors.
Well, yeah, little Mr. Kitty here looks a little bit upset.
You know, tigers always look a little upset.
Well, wouldn't you be too? I mean...
Yeah. Well, I mean, seriously.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's a lot going on. That's a lot for waking up in the morning trying to have your breakfast and realizing there's a tiger next door. And probably for the tiger too, just like, you know.
Looking for breakfast and going, here's the neighbors. That one looks a little skinny.
You're that or being like, I like my eggs over easy and a little steak tartare.
Yeah. Very much like, what? Yeah, very much like, huh? What are you doing here? Because he looks like he's just out for a stroll. Like, oh, let's just go hunt. Let's go, stalk the neighbors.
You know.
And who in the right mind wants a tiger for a pet?
They are pretty.
Right.
And I don't know, exotic pets have a history. Like Frosted Flakes. No, Tony is not on the loose. But this tiger is.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But again, I'm still wondering where Carol Baskin is and if, we need to be worried about another man.
Well, yeah. The funny part is the article we have, there is a related article that Tiger King star Carol Baskin launches a cat-themed crypto coin.
Uh-huh. So is that LionCon?
I don't know. Lion coin?
Lion coin?
You know. I don't know. But yeah, so apparently the tiger is only 9 months old and named India.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, poor little baby tiger. I mean, doesn't look like a baby.
She ain't no
Still
baby.
scare the crap out of me.
She'll eat you.
But he,
Will eat you.
yes.
Yes. So your business has been in the news here recently.
Oh.
Yeah, we apparently should have sent the pipeline your business card.
I was reading that one this morning. I like digging into that one. But yeah, apparently it was a bad weekend for the Colonial Pipeline.
Mm-hmm.
Ransomware attacks. They're back.
Mm-hmm.
So if y'all don't, well, you'll probably do remember, but yeah, those hit healthcare last time. They were big in the news.
Mm-hmm.
Local hospital actually near where I used to live in Princeton got hit with a ransomware attack. That was a ugly experience. Yeah, they went completely paper charting for months.
Mm-hmm.
Like months trying to clean all that up.
Right.
So yeah, granted, right now they've shut down the Colonial Pipeline, which does not affect West Virginia. So if you're stocking up on gas in West Virginia, you're just screwing your neighbors.
Right.
Just FYI, like it doesn't do anything for us.
Right.
Like you're just buying gas to buy gas.
Right.
Like, and please don't put it in Rubbermaid containers. Like, please don't. There are images of people doing that.
Right.
Like they're filling like plastic totes with gasoline.
Stop it.
Yeah.
Where is your common sense?
Mm-hmm. Like, just chill out on the gas. Like, I know we've all had a crappy year. We remember toilet paper. We really do.
Right.
It's not like that. Like, it'll be fine.
Mm-hmm. Very much
Don't
so.
get crazy. Like, just understand the amount of gas you need. Now, for West Virginia, we are running into some shortages right now, but that is based on buying and consumption, not on deliveries. So that'll all get straightened out later in the week.
Here's the other thing with it, and this is the problem people don't understand about the pipeline. We've got multiple things going on with gas prices. Yes, it's up 22%. This is not a time to go buying oil. Yeah. Because the gasoline that we're buying now is actually oil that was produced 6 months ago. And that oil 6 months ago, there was this lovely thing in Texas called a winter storm that froze most of it. And it couldn't produce. Then we had COVID restrictions at the refineries, so it couldn't produce again. So yeah, gas is up 22%. It's not a time to go buy oil. And I'll be right back because we got to let your son in.
Okay, absolutely. And I would also point out that some of the issues that we are facing with gasoline in general actually have more to do with trucking. Because if y'all have been watching the news at all, you do know that we have a problem right now getting people to drive products anywhere. So we are in a trucking shortage. So that is also affecting prices. Now, what got me with some of the gas stations, there you go. Shuffle me around.
Yeah.
But what got me with some of the stories on the trucking issues, and especially gasoline trucking issues, is back at the earlier part of last year, or roughly about now, a lot of companies, a lot of fuel service companies, ended up laying off like 25% of their workforce because there was a decreased demand. That unfortunately has turned into a lot of those people walked away. This is sort of what happens when you have a skilled workforce. You dump them because it's economical at the time, and then you have a resurgence in your industry. We all knew that was going to be a temporary reduction. in terms of the demand for gasoline. We knew that was going to be temporary. I put all the blame for that. Like, these companies are trying to play the victim. That, oh, they just can't find workers and, blah, blah, blah. No, you had workers. You let a lot of them go. And, because you were a little idle in terms of, the need for your product. And you knew this was a temporary issue.
Mm-hmm.
And you treated them like yesterday's garbage. Yeah, I don't think I'd be running back to that job either.
See, we're hearing this a lot with employers. We can't hire people. We can't find people to work for us. No, you can't. People for over a year has had the ability to find something different.
Well, and especially those who are working from home right now,
right.
And especially those in industries that, got sent home and just told, like, here's your unemployment, or, whatever, we're laying you off, we're, firing you. Right. That forced a lot of people, I think, to rethink what they were doing. Because unfortunately, while this makes it, like, I understand both sides of it.
Well,
on a corporate business decision level, yeah, you don't want to pay people to sit around. I get that. I can get that. Like, I hire someone to mow my grass. I expect them to mow the grass. That's the thing. Right. Like, that's what you're here for. It shouldn't take like 4 hours to do. We have a small yard. But at the same time, you also have to recognize the value and what it's going to cost you down the road to replace these people if you get rid of them. That, they're not going to sit here and wait around. Like, that's not how this works. People still have bills, they have utilities, they have rent, they have mortgages, they have car payments. They have to go find something else now. Right. Unemployment helps. It's not a throw off on unemployment entirely. It helps. But the reality is, when you had a good, stable income and you built your finances around that, unemployment isn't always going to, fill the gap. Right. Yeah. And it does cause people to rethink, like, what am I doing? Why am I here? Can I do something else?
Right.
So, yeah.
Well, and, there's books out there, and, there's one that I've been reading right now, and I'm loving it. I'm waiting for my Kindle to pull up here so that I can give you the title of it. But it has over 10,000 jobs that are remote, work from home, do your own thing.
Yeah, the only thing we caution against are some of the customer service like options out there, because there are some ugly ones. So if you're being asked to pay to take a class to service a client,
no,
please don't work there. No. There's a few major companies that are offering that setup. You buy your own computer and equipment, then you pay to take a class that you're not guaranteed to pass. Like, you can pay this money and fail the class, and they're not going to help you.
Right. Now, this book is called Work from Home While You Roam. It's the ultimate guide to jobs you can do from anywhere by Robin Barnett. It has over 300 resources for remote, freelance, and entrepreneurial contract labor, side hustle, and professionalism. And I'm loving some of the stuff here. Like, did you know you can get paid to talk to people? If you're a naturally English one?
Yes.
You can be paid to teach conversation. All you're doing is talking. You're not technically teaching, but you're helping them get conversational.
And that is a concern for people that are not native to a language. Right. Is their ability to not only carry on a conversation,
right,
but to also ensure that their confidence is where it ought to be. is that, one, to ensure that they have the ability to,
Right.
and two, to know where their problems may exist at, like where they're going to get lost in a language that isn't as familiar.
Well, because, and we've all took those freaking high school language classes. How many times do you look at someone and go, where is the library? That's not conversation. That's not actual conversation. And that explains a lot of why, like, when I have clients from, Thailand or clients from Japan, they speak better English than I do.
Well, and some of it is there's a formal version of any language, and then there's what people actually say.
Right.
And that can throw you off, is because if you're looking for this formalized speech, it doesn't always work out. And then there's also the cultural aspect.
Right.
And I found that interesting. Back in college, got encouraged to go to dinner with, not a like date, but it was an appreciation thing. I had done a bunch of work for one of our visiting professors. And I got encouraged, really, because I'm sitting here going, this is what I'm paid to do. But anyway, it turned out it was also an excuse, basically for this professor to sit down and have a real conversation with someone. Right. In a language he was non-native. His native language was German.
Right.
And it actually became less like, I would say he was probably at like 95th percentile on English. Like, he had a few stumbling blocks. But his English was very, very good. Right. His problem, though, he kept running into were cultural issues.
Right.
And cultural, like, understandings. Because I was 18, 19 at the time. And he just looked at me dumbfounded, like, why didn't I order a beer with dinner? Because I could have. And I'm like, no, I really can't. Right. He's like, what do you mean? And I'm having to, like, explain this as, no, in the United States, I have to be 21 years old to order alcohol. And he's like, everywhere? Because he's taking this in as the entire United States. Right. Because he's from Germany. The entire United States. Yeah, the entire United States. Any one of the 50 states and territories, I have to be 21 in order to buy alcohol or to be served alcohol. The only exception to that, which is not one you want to play with because it normally doesn't go well, is there are some exceptions for, like, if a parent orders for a child, but it's they're not, most places won't do that. Like, most restaurants won't pull that one.
Right. And the other place of that is on military bases. If you're in line service, you can drink.
Used to.
Yeah.
I don't think they can anymore.
What?
If I remember correctly, I think that changed.
So they had to change their line of, here's my gun, here's my beer?
Essentially. Because they didn't keep the exception when they raised smoking to 21. So you can be in the armed services, die for your country, and I believe you can neither drink nor smoke.
Well, that's ridiculous. What's the fun in that one?
Oh, Shannon likes books. Oh, we too. So yeah, I want to go back though. So Shannon needs a nap, too much moonshine, and double barrel shotgun wedding keg. I'm sorry, I have questions. What is a double barrel shotgun wedding keg? I'm not sure I understand. So okay. But yeah, no, languages and cultures get interesting.
It does.
They really do.
And that's just one of over the 300 jobs she has in here. Some of them are interesting. Some of them I wanted just as my backup plan.
Your backup plan or things to do when you grow up?
Both. My backup plan and things that I do when I grow up.
Okay.
Yeah, And to just see, like, okay, if I had a year of pay, my little $734 a week. And that's if I'm a max earner on unemployment insurance.
Mm-hmm. Oh. Okay, so apparently double barrel shotgun wedding keg is a type of ale that's double aged in a bourbon or whiskey barrel.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently it's amazing.
But I wanted to see what she had out there because, this is one of the people that I want to have a conversation with because she was like 50, went and bought an RV, never had been camping, and took off. Yeah. And she originally was a romance scholar. But anyway, I kept hearing these people complain, these employers complain, can't find anybody. Government's paying them too much to stay home. I'm like $735 a week.
Well, and the reality that most people aren't getting that.
No. In reality, they're mostly getting $602.
Yeah, and then you've got to look at the minimum wage and what that turns into weekly.
Right.
And realize that's not a lot of money for anyone.
No.
Like, the only people that's a lot of money to are people who earn minimum wage. Right. And that's only in terms of when they don't get their paychecks.
Yeah.
Because, no, that's... Which we've argued that. We have set that out there and been like, it's...
Right, but why is this making news? I mean, this should be the shame. This would be if this was us, this would be the shame of our company that a government assistance program is taking our workforce. I would go, all right, Chiefy, give them some money.
No, I'm sorry, I've been there. That crap was hard enough as a college student earning minimum wage or just barely above it because I did get a raise. Right. It wasn't much, but I did get a raise. I made more than minimum wage. I've been there and I've been, $30,000 a year.
Right.
Gross. That's hard enough.
Right.
And that's what I made immediately out of college. I was trying to live in a decent proximity to where I worked.
Right.
I didn't have a lot of crazy expenses. And I was realizing I couldn't replace a car.
Right.
I couldn't buy a used car and have insurance on it and eat.
Right.
I had to choose between I could have the car and the insurance and eat, or I could have the car and the insurance, eat, and have an and not have an apartment. Right. I could live in the car.
Right.
Financially, that's ridiculous.
Right.
And that's with a college degree.
Right.
I had the paper.
Right.
And so no, that's where we're at. And then you turn around and in those jobs, which again we've gone into. But you turn around into that job and you realize you're not working 45 to 55 hours a week. You're working way more than that.
Right.
And the reality of that money is you're in a high price area.
Right.
Sorry, hate to explain it to you, or explain it, to the employer, but it's I don't make enough to work here.
Right.
I'm sorry, I really don't.
Right.
And then also have a conversation in which you have a company executive questioning why someone's fixing your car in the parking lot because I want to go home after this. But tries to explain to you that you should really go buy a BMW or lease a BMW because they have this really great maintenance program. And I'm sitting here going, you really aren't in touch with what $30,000 a year is. Or, well, at that point, I think I was up to 35.
Right.
I'm you have no idea. I understand it for you. Everything you take home, you take home.
Right.
The company pays for your cell phone. The company pays for your computers. The company pays for... at that point, I'd seen the credit card statements.
Right.
Related to a thing we had to go back and depreciate some equipment.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, it also meant I got a good window into what all the company paid for.
Right.
Like lease agreements, gasoline, car insurance, all of it.
Right.
So literally, what you get paid walks out the door with you. It's not immediately gobbled by all the things I need to get here.
Right.
Like, or to be able to keep my job, because you've already told me I'm required to have a cell phone, and I'm required to have an internet connection at home, and I'm required to have a decent computer at home.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but you don't pay for any of those.
Right.
Like, you don't supply the computer, you don't pay for or supply the cell phone, and you don't pay for my internet access.
Right.
Hi, think it through. Like, my money's getting gobbled by requirements.
Mm-hmm. And those requirements being outlandish. See, and then, and here's the thing. And then I'll listen to you talk about this place. Mm-hmm. And then I think of my interest in IT, and when I was working IT, mm-hmm. and the experience I had is completely different mm-hmm. than what you dealt. And that's because
you had a glorious experience.
Oh yeah. Very
glorious.
But
also for a company that was, recently raked through, or the CEO was raked through the coals over how they paid some of their other employees.
Mm-hmm.
Because they didn't. It's like they understand the need for technology and IT, which right. The company I worked for didn't. We were over glorified clerical. That was mm-hmm. told to our face more than once. Understood the need for IT, but that company doesn't really understand all of its customer-facing people mm-hmm. are also very, very important, and that some of the areas that these employees are working in, what they're paying them, they can't afford to survive.
Right.
If you have a branch of your business in, say, California, mm-hmm. And you're hiring people at the rate they were hiring, you can't afford to live anywhere near mm-hmm. that the actual physical location of the business.
Right.
Like, and that's kind of where I was at in North Carolina. Is what I was being paid, I technically needed to go across the Virginia-North Carolina border into one of the like Sleepy Hollow bedroom communities of Virginia to be able to actually live semi-decently.
Right.
But it would have meant that I had a 90-minute commute to work every morning.
Right.
Like, straight up.
We are live. Yeah. Welcome to the Psych Cop Shop.
Why are you playing again?
And then we have
I have no idea. Hey, it happens.
It happens. I gotta love when Facebook decides to make us into a pop-up.
Yeah, really. So no, this seems like such news to companies, though.
Well,
and I don't get it.
Such news to companies that are run by people that are not connected with their workforce. And it kind of brings back the old adage, and everyone looks down at Walmart's in multiple ways now, or Costco in multiple ways now. But when Sam Walton was the head of Walmart's, he was in every store. Mm-hmm. The CEO of Costco is in every store every year. Mm-hmm. You can't tell me that that man does not know his greeters at the store. He doesn't know each store and each person employee because he's in it. One store every day he's in it.
Right. And that leads you to conversations. It's going to lead you into understanding what your workforce is dealing with. Right. And that's fundamentally the problem is the more you separate management from employees, and at best they have a very forced, formal relationship at best with executives, the less they understand that there's a whole world outside of your C-suite.
Right.
No, we're over here That's your level of pay is creating problems.
Right.
That high, I know that, and I can understand. The company I worked for opened in the 70s, originally.
Right.
When they brought on their first employee, which was technically an executive,
right,
or became one, I'm sure they paid probably around 25 to 30,
right,
to hire them,
right,
in the 70s.
right,
I could very much see that employee making that.
right.
And I know it's got to sound like a lot if you haven't really kept pace, if you're not, like seeing a world evolve around you.
Mm-hmm. Well, what's interesting, and the reason I'm bringing him up is, he stepped in 2012. He's not the founder, but the founder made it very clear that he'd kill him if the price of hot dog combo went up from $1.50.
Okay.
Because he was seeing it as, we've not raised it since the 80s. We need to do it. And the founder flat out looked at him and said, I will kill you if you raise the price of hot dogs.
Yeah.
And, before he stepped in, before he took the founder role and wasn't the active CEO, he was in before he stepped into the CEO, the founder was the CEO, and he was in every store every day. If you talk to older Walmart's employees, Sam Walton opened every store, worked his shifts in every store, worked the floor in every store, and done it not as the CEO and founder, but done it as stock clerk, the checkout person.
Yeah. Well, and now you look at that family is so divorced from the business, they collect a check.
Right.
Like, you want to talk about welfare, that's basically what that works out to.
Right.
It's just multi-million-dollar welfare.
Right.
But it's what it is. They're getting paid a check for nothing.
Right.
Like, they have no involvement in the company.
Right.
And then you have shareholders and investors and, all these other things going on. You have an executive, corporate headquarters that really doesn't spend a lot of time anywhere near a store.
Right.
Doesn't really understand what's going on in stores. Doesn't understand that, that pay that was decent 20 years ago, not so decent. Especially not when you start screwing with hours.
Right. Well, and that's why I think Undercover Boss was such a big hit. But I also think so many of their people, the bosses, learned so much about the shows. I mean, learned about their businesses. The one that comes to mind was Visiting Angels.
Okay. When
the CEO of Visiting Angels went undercover as a visiting angel, I think she was, because she's an RN, so she worked as an RN for a week. And it was very much a change in the company's atmosphere and everything.
Oh, I would say it would most definitely be.
Yeah.
I don't know when that occurred, if that was prior to or sometime after we used the service, because that was who took care of my grandmother. But I was running into some head bang against wall of what the hell are you doing?
Right.
You're hiring people, and I don't care how much a business says, we don't discuss pay. Everyone discusses pay at some point.
Right.
Especially when they're low paid.
Right.
Because the struggle gets real.
Right.
And I'm sitting there talking to one employee and I'm like, you can't afford this job.
Right.
Which was effectively what they had told us, that I can't come back.
Right.
And it's like, okay, what's going on? I thought it was something to do with my grandmother or something to... No. we were so far out of their service area. That all of their employees at that point that they had been sending us were so far away from us that by the time they drove there, paid for the gasoline, got up early and all this, paid for tolls, none of which was reimbursed and none of it was on the clock. They paid to work there practically.
Right.
Like for us specifically, they paid to work there.
Right.
And it's like, I'm sorry, I can't pay for the privilege of taking care of your grandmother.
Right.
Is not what they said.
Right.
But that's what I understand.
Right.
Like, I fully understand it. Like, and I was like, I got you.
Right.
Like, no, I really appreciate understanding that I can change some things and we can, make this better for the next one.
Right.
Which we did. We moved it to a full 8 hours instead of a 4. And that, between that and one of their new hires, we actually lucked up really well.
Right.
But that's the reality a lot of people are facing is, especially in jobs that require mobility.
Right.
In terms of mobile employees. You really, if you're a business owner, you got to think about all the cost of getting there. Like, this isn't driving to a job site for 8 hours.
Right.
If that employee is in a car multiple times a day, they can ultimately end up paying to work there. You really have to consider that.
Right. And you have to consider what you're doing and how you're doing it and if it's benefiting you as the employee. So do I feel bad for these bosses that can't get employees?
No.
Good ones, yeah. The ones that are, stuck with a corporate, like, well, this is what corporate says I can pay.
Well, even to some extent, I'm not saying I have no sympathy for a manager in a corporate position. Like, as in, like, let's take Dollar General for an example. It's not that I have no sympathy for that manager, but it's like your problem didn't start yesterday, or a month ago. Right. Your problem has been here for a very long time. You just finally hit the true pain point,
right?
In which people quit applying,
right? Very much so. And we've seen here locally companies starting to raise that wage. Of advertising $10 an hour, $12 an hour, $14 an hour.
Yeah,
and
eventually they'll get $14
an hour.
Pardon?
Eventually, Sheets is. I mean, right now, Sheets is up to $14 an hour. Starting.
Yeah. Like, I find it interesting that lose the battle, win the war, I guess, on minimum wage. Like, federal minimum wage didn't go through.
Right.
That increase. But fundamentally, I think we're getting there.
Right.
Is, and from the other side of it is
to consider, and this is what people aren't considering also, we've lost population in this area in two different ways. Currently, we've now lost more people than we did in World War II to COVID. That's a lot of jobs. A lot of people a lot of those are working, paying jobs. Then we have people that have left the state and are leaving states for other states that are cheaper to live in, or they've always wanted to live in.
Well, if you're looking at the available market, and I want to be very, very careful as I say this, because I don't mean to insult people. West Virginia's been in a brain drain. The people smart enough to get out have gotten out.
Right.
And every graduating class has that. Now, I'm not saying there are, everyone left is unintelligent, but a lot of those that are left can't get out.
Or they
in terms of
ways.
Do what now?
They found different ways to work. I mean, how many people do we know that are just doing a different job? They either work for themselves, They're getting ready to work for themselves. They've took this year and redesigned their life to work for themselves, or they've hit the road.
Yeah. Well, and then the other part of that is also just the number of people who are stuck in family situations that, mom and dad, grandma and grandpa, whomever, require care.
Right.
And like, it's the saddest thing to be a responsible, intelligent adult who doesn't have a drug addiction or an alcohol problem in a family that needs a caregiver.
Right.
Because you're hi. It doesn't matter that you like have a degree and you went to school and all these things. You like, that's where you're needed, and if you're a decent human being at all, that's where you go to.
Right.
And yes, West Virginia is also a state with a large elderly population. And yes, they are starting to pass on in larger numbers, but you also have to realize that elderly population, like this whole, retire at 62 and, dead by 74 life expectancy isn't really how it's played out. That's not what we're seeing medically, because you look through a lot of those obituaries. A lot of our dying elders are in their 90s or close to it.
Right.
And if you're talking about someone who, develops dementia around their, mid to late 70s and then still lives on, because, pacemakers are a thing and, good health care marginally available. Better than it was 100 years ago, certainly. Right. You end up with, a caregiver that is suddenly, taking 10, 15, 20 years of caregiving experience. And not all of them are male, for certain. I'm kind of a little bit of an exception, especially by age. Older family, but there's also the reality that in that situation, a lot of women end up having this dealt to them.
Right.
They start a career, they have their children, they think they're going back to work, or they have gone back to work and they're just starting to get their groove back at work. They're starting to get promoted. They're starting to have a, nice little retirement account going. And, maybe they're not going to retire at exactly 62, but hey, they're getting closer. They made up that ground. Suddenly getting slapped with, parents and in-laws that need care. Right. And more likely than not, it falls to a female family member.
Right. Well, and then Shannon brings up a good point, and it's not just West Virginia. Yes, West Virginia does have an elderly population, but we're moving from the boomers into families that only had one or two children. And aging population that's going to, slowly decline and then, of course, pass on. But that's still going to leave us with less population, less people to work. And this is a Social Security problem because it's pooling incomes, and then now more are withdrawing income than what's going into it.
Well, and we do have a large problem with, in West Virginia, in younger age groups, there's a high rate of substance use.
Right. Hi, Rachel.
Then you turn around and we also, and this is a national problem, the mid-50s housewife, in terms of women in their 50s, are now becoming like substance abusers. As in, like, everything was going great, at least surfacely, and suddenly they exit the workplace, they become addicted, they go through any money they had, and typically, a couple of, marriages that end in divorce, and have to do a total reset in, 10 or 15 years if they survive.
Right. All right. So let's kind of talk about some other things going on. First up, let's talk about this Indian temple in New Jersey that is now being kind of held for forced labor.
Oh, my.
Yeah, apparently federal agents descended on the massive Indian temple in Roslynville, New Jersey, as a lawsuit charged in Lowcastle men have been lured from India to work for about $1 an hour.
Oh, good grief. Oh, so basically it's room and board, works out to most of $7.50, and then they get $1.
No,
One of those, or
no, they're paying them $1 an hour.
oh,
Yeah. Building roads, storm drains, digging ditches, and shoveling snow, all for the equivalent of about $150 per month. They were paid $50 in cash, and the rest deposited in an account in India.
oh, good God. Sorry, I'm reading through now.
Uh-huh.
Oh.
So go for it.
Yeah, it's a total mess. So they were basically brought over on R1 visas, which are temporary visas used for clergy and lay religious workers such as missionaries. But were basically said to be volunteers. Yeah, that's one way of phrasing the word slavery. Asked to sign a bunch of documents, most of which were in a language they didn't understand, and to tell people that they were skilled workers, either skilled carvers or decorative painters. But they ultimately ended up doing manual labor, 13 hours a day, and operating heavy machinery, for about the equivalent of $450 a month. Yeah, which they were paid $50 in cash, and the rest went to accounts in India.
That they may or may not have access to.
Yeah.
They're not even sure if they have access to them. Because what's weird is if you're an Indian nationalist, meaning that you are, your main citizenship is Indian, you still have to pay taxes to India anywhere you live, anywhere you gain income from. But $1 a day in New Jersey?
Yeah, that's exploitive as hell.
Right.
And it looks like this organization is kind of working both sides of the coin.
Right.
That effectively, it sounds like they're set up, I'm going to assume, as a nonprofit. Oh, yeah, no, they're a global enterprise of both for-profit and nonprofit entities.
Right.
So, yeah.
Right.
They've been, they're working both sides of the coin.
Right.
Yeah. Ugh. It's still horrendous.
Exactly.
I mean, it's really horrendous. So yeah, on one hand, they're presenting themselves as this amazing nonprofit. On the other side, they're really just exploiting everything they can. That's really sad.
Right. And
it's hideous. So yeah. Ugh.
Yeah, and the lawsuit says the men's passports were confiscated and they were confined to a fenced-in and guarded site where they were forbidden from talking to visitors and religious volunteers. They were served bland diets of lentils and potatoes, and their pay was docked for minor violations, such as being seen without a helmet or according to a claim.
That should never happen here.
Right.
I mean, that shouldn't happen anywhere, period. But
right. And I don't even think this is allowed to happen in India. Because India, while they have different views on things, they don't allow this crap.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they're going to be in trouble in both international and United States.
Yeah. So yeah, apparently this is the first forced labor case of its scale in the U.S. Since 1995.
Right.
That actually helped create the Federal Trafficking Victims Protection Act.
Right. And a lot of times when we hear that, we think sex work. No.
Yeah, this isn't sex trafficking. Human trafficking takes all forms.
Right.
Like anything that's exploitative.
Right.
And this is certainly exploitative.
Oh, this is past it.
Like, there's no debating it. You know what I mean? Like, it's one of those stories, like, you can't even debate this.
Right.
Like, I don't know why you bothered to hire attorneys to go defend your ass.
Well, I think they've got to hire attorneys to try to get out of it. Point blank.
Yeah, I think, buying a bottle of lube and, some handcuffs for your ankles would probably have been a better use of your funds.
Or just pay the right fee, the amount of fees.
Well, I'm just saying at this point,
mm-hmm.
No, I'm sorry. I think that they're going to have you dead to rights. I don't know how you can sit here and try to argue. I don't know what you argue.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it either happened or it didn't.
Right.
And a lot of people are saying it happened, like all your workers.
Like 90 of them.
Like you're going to really struggle to argue this one.
Exactly.
I'm sure it'll end up in a settlement from hell.
Oh yeah.
That mostly pays the attorneys and still screws the workers. But
part of this, however, is feds going after this. This isn't just lawyers. This will be federal labor laws being applied. I don't think they're going to be able to get religious exemption either, because that is what's commonly occurred here.
Mm-hmm.
Is you claim religious exemption.
Well, but fundamentally, they're using a method of bringing people over that would tend to indicate that they were volunteers or missionaries or something of that type. But that's not who these people were. That's not how they were treated. This is not what occurred. I don't think New Jersey can really be compared to, a country without running water and, no schools and, like you're going to have a hard time making the case.
Right.
Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, buy a bottle of lube and grab your ankles. Like, you're screwed, dude. Like, that's all that's left. You're not going to be able to win this. I can't see how you could win this and be like, no, it was totally legitimate. Like, no, you're screwed.
Yeah.
You got busted. You're going to end up having to pay a lot of money. Like, bankruptcy level money.
Exactly. If not more. I mean, because they've got the money. Speaking of money, someone has been denied bankruptcy.
Yes. Oh, I'm calling it the best story of the year so far.
Okay. Go for it.
Oh, so, yeah, the poor NRA, as in they are a little poor at the moment, have filed bankruptcy, or tried to. That has been dismissed. The judge is basically gobsmacked. So the NRA is incorporated since 1871 in New York. And they basically intentionally mismanaged the company, or the incorporation, to then move, in their attempt to move it to Texas, file for bankruptcy, and get out of New York before further investigation could shut them down. All right, so what just happened is they got called on their shit. That their attempt to file bankruptcy was not in good faith, and that it looked like it was just on its face, it looks like it is an end run around New York's action against them. That effectively they're trying to have their cake and eat it too. that they can both run the organization improperly, and then when New York comes knocking on their door, can then run away to Texas, salvage the assets,
right,
and escape all liabilities. So,
right.
Yeah. So, effectively, top management, Wayne LaPierre, excluded as many people as possible from what all was going on and how the money was being spent. Even including their own attorneys.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which the judge was dumbfounded by. Just flat out dumbfounded.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what the hell? Mm-hmm. I think could have been the judge's quote. Wasn't, judges are more professional than that, but still, I think summed up, the judge was sitting here going, what the hell?
Right.
This is garbage.
Right.
Excuse me.
Well, not only that, but I'm sure the New York attorney is elated. Like, she can do what she wants to do. And she's been the one that also is going after Trump.
Mm-hmm.
Going, oh, no, Mr. Trump. You may be a resident of Florida, but you have some things to answer to in New York.
Yes. But yeah. So it's possible that the NRA is going to end up under a trustee.
Right.
If they try to refile it, because the case was dismissed without bankruptcy, but the judge already warned them.
Uh-huh.
But if you come back in here again,
uh-huh,
I'm going to rip you to shreds and appoint a trustee.
Yeah.
Because you already demonstrated in open court severe mismanagement.
Right.
So I think they basically got told, go take your lumps.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because if you bring it back in here, it's going to hurt more.
Right.
Which, understandably.
Which I find interesting, some of those senators from, like, New Jersey's comments when he tweeted the news story and said, oh, no, thoughts and prayers. Senator Bob McZee, Democrat of New Jersey, tweeted that.
Yeah. I mean, the poor NRA.
Right. Like, some of the, and I'm really liking some of our Twitters. Some of these, some of our representatives on Twitter have really gotten a little, like, you get to see the comedic side of them.
Yeah, they've gotten a little more feisty.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have deep appreciation for that and the realness of it. That, no, we're all sitting, like, I don't know that there can be that many people who are not conservatives that can really feel all that bad for the NRA right now.
Right.
Like, it's a real struggle. Like, I don't even know technically as a conservative how you can see this much mismanagement going on and have any sympathy.
Right.
But, they probably donated to your campaign, so I'm sure you have to. Like, you were paid for it.
Right.
As well as your vote.
Right.
So, but still, it's just, yeah.
And it's like, and then we have, lovely Teddy Cruz.
Oh, good Lord, what did he do now?
Oh, he sent a personal message to, our lovely senator about the up-and-coming fight.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, because there's a voting bill up, and Ted Cruz is, like, trying to get, our idiot to side again with the Republicans. And it's like, you're a Democrat, act like a Democrat.
Well, that'd be nice. Not, I mean, like, he's a coin toss It's like whoever gives him the most money.
Right.
But I mean, fundamentally,
Right.
like he's a coin toss vote.
Yeah.
Like it's whoever calls him, and it becomes a game of capital back scratch.
Right.
So yeah, no, I don't know at this point that it really matters to Manchin to like be like demonized or whatever.
Well,
Like
he
I don't think it matters.
door with the rest of them. Like, I'm tired of Manchin. I am tired of Capico. I am definitely tired of Mooney. Recently I tweeted Mooney asking him just exactly when will he begin packing his 2 offices that he keeps writing about being open.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
But no, so what is this bill about?
Well, this bill is about election fraud and election preventing states from trying to supersede federal law on elections.
Mm-hmm.
The Republicans don't like it because it stops their voter fraud that they've been doing for over 30 years now.
Yeah. Yeah, conservatives have been a little cranky about this whole don't gerrymander thing.
Yeah, don't gerrymander. Don't, think that you can get by with things.
Yeah, they've been a little cranky about that. They really, really have not liked the fact that, there's been a lot of federal challenges to voter ID.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I understand it. I mean, if I fell down, hit my head, and I were to become a conservative, it's the kind of crap I'd pull,
Right.
But at the same time, like, come on, guys.
Right.
Like, seriously?
Seriously.
Like, y'all are the ones keep getting arrested for voter fraud.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is how you know it happens is because you're committing it.
Exactly. And it's like, you're the ones trying to, hold the vote and disguise the vote and try to keep the vote away.
And let me be clear, when I say that it's happening, it's that it's still even. What's being done isn't enough to actually influence the outcome of the elections.
Right.
Like, it's still not, it's a marginal issue.
Mm-hmm.
And has been a marginal issue.
Right.
So,
yeah. So the Democrats are taking this on. They're trying to pass laws to keep the states in line, to keep the vote, to do what should have been done, which is there's one voting system in America. There's one legalization of voting system. These are who can vote. This is how they can vote in these ways.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody's liking it.
No.
Not one Republican's liking it.
No. This has been a system in which they have been slowly trying to make as difficult as possible in the wrong communities.
Right.
I put air quotes around that if you're listening. The wrong communities.
Right.
To ensure that they get the votes that they want.
Uh-huh.
While effectively disenfranchising voters and creating an unfair election.
Right.
Like, this is what it's become. Or is slowly turning into, is what I should more appropriately say. And in some instances has already become.
Right.
Depending upon where you're at in the United States.
Right.
And, how much that area has been able to get away with.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Totally agree. And they're still trying to figure out how to get the loans canceled for the student loan debt program.
Oh, wouldn't that be glorious?
They're working on it. Elizabeth Warren is streamheading this and looking at her news feed, i.e. her Twitter line. She's attacking it from all sides.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will sit here and say I'll call my student loans on the far end of reasonable.
Well, they're not even on the far end of reasonable, honey. They're twice what I paid for this house.
Well, I know they are, but I'm still saying,
right?
Like, if you want to look at student loan debt and how much I'm in, I would call it on the far end of reasonable. Like, it was stretching like the limits then.
Right.
To look at students since me over the last 5, 10, 15 years, I like, as it's grown, like, no one has really paid less to graduate from the same school I have, or been saddled with as, with less debt than I was.
Right.
No. Like, sorry, there's a limit.
Right.
Like, this is what I have is already what could be considered lifelong debt. Like, a lot of things have to change really, really quickly for me to just hurry up and pay that off.
Well,
but if you're talking about a student graduating with 90 or 100 or 150,000 in debt,
right,
that's a house.
Right.
That's a nice house.
Right.
That is a turnkey, walk through the door, new house. Not everywhere, but, hi. That's and considering your max repayment period is typically 20 years, that's a lot to come up with, especially when most of that 20 years is going to be during the crappiest years of your employment. I.e., the point in which you're making, next to nothing,
right,
or seemingly next to nothing,
right.
Especially if you're not, on an IBR, you marginally don't qualify. Those payments are huge,
right?
Because if you're at like the $100,000 level, that's roughly 400 and something a month,
right? What do you think of this Liz Cheney being ousted from position number 3 in the GOP leadership?
Oh, I did not. Yeah, that's new to me.
Okay, I'll throw you the link.
Yeah, somehow I missed that one. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Oh, I mean, kind of understand it. If I remember right, she's been kind of more moderate these days.
Well, no, she's been very anti-Trump these days.
Did she go the other way? Oh, it's hard to remember who's doing what.
Well, we've got Ted Cruz being Ted Cruz, running away from his state. Why his state is passing legislation to pass the cost of the storm, not off to regulate the Texas, econ, not why, or to help join the national net so that they don't face it again. No, they're looking at raising a fee on the consumers because the companies are in debt.
Yeah. Well, which argues where'd the money go?
Well, not only that, but argues the fact that why was Ted Cruz not down there dealing with his people? We had to send NYC down there.
Oh, well, yeah. That part was kind of like par for the course. But no, as for like what's happening with, energy in Texas, I'm sorry, I'm still stuck on like, what were you doing before? You had some of the highest rates.
Yeah.
Like, you are sitting here with the most crazy system. In a system that was supposed to guarantee you more money as a corporation under the scheme than a more traditional approach to a regulated energy market. So how are you broke?
Right.
Which ultimately, my question, where'd the money go?
Right.
Like, this was supposed to enable you.
Right.
One of the arguments for this was that if you were in a less regulated utility market, you would be better capable financially. Yet, at the point in which Texas really needed you to be better financially, you were actually worse off.
Right.
So where'd the money go? Like that sound, and I think I've said it before, is what it sounds like with, energy in Texas, is that, this all went to like shareholders and, executive compensation, private jets and all the spoils, without ever actually putting the money where it should have been.
Right.
Like, we already know it wasn't where it should have been, because if any of it had been spent appropriately on infrastructure, or elements of that infrastructure that were important, Texas would have had a lot less of a problem. Right.
Texas would have a lot less of a problem if their infrastructure was built correctly. It was not built correctly. This is why we have major problems going everywhere in energy in itself. This is why there's we have gas problems, because their electrical energy system was not designed to deal with proper weatherization, because it would have been too expensive. It would have been too expensive to stick a blanket on something or to run a hose with radiator fluid in it. This is ridiculous. And now they want to pass it off to the customers that had to pay the supremely high $5,000 bill. Now they want to charge them a fee. Yeah. Bullshit.
Right. Well, and moreover, like, this is something we see throughout a regulated market.
Right.
Is, passing recovery costs.
Right.
Which is ultimately what this sounds like, is a recovery cost onto consumers.
Right.
And within a regulated utility, that requires, one, some oversight.
Right.
And two, actually has to be justified.
Right.
But three, again, that's in a already regulated utility in which, you have to apply to raise rates when you raise them.
Right.
Not a system in which you've already had an on-demand rate increase.
Right.
That, your demand for services exceeded your capacity, so you started charging a premium.
Right.
Okay. How do you expect, as an unregulated utility, to justify, which I know is effectively what you're saying, but to spell it out, how do you justify a recovery cost when you already just got paid a premium?
Right. Well, we see that here. We're seeing it here all over the place. The electric is getting a raise. Power is got a raise for building infrastructure that goes nowhere.
Right. Well, but granted, even I mean, I'm not saying that, like the Public Utilities Commission in West Virginia is all that much better, but we've never been in a situation in which suddenly we were paying dollars per kilowatt.
Right.
That's never happened. Like, we've never hit that moment in which suddenly our rates so dramatically increase as to make you question, can I afford to survive this situation?
Right.
Like, can I afford to survive and have heat?
Right.
Like, we've never had to make that decision. Granted, every year those rates go up. Every year we hear about another, increase in those fees. But they're still functionally strapped as to how much they can do each year.
Right. But speaking of them, PCS demands us an answer. PSC is demanding answers from Suddenlink about service and billing in West Virginia.
Yes, I did see that earlier this week. And I fundamentally have one question that I don't think anyone's starting to address.
Right.
Because they're looking into a lot of how other aspects of the issue has occurred. What I think that they're missing with looking into Suddenlink is what happened to their customer service in terms of who is handling your outsourced customer service, because it's no longer in-house.
Right.
And I will just about guarantee, as we were talking earlier about those work from home jobs, and being very careful what companies you choose to work for.
Mm-hmm.
The other side of that coin is that these positions that you have paid to take a class and pass that class and now work from home on, also come with a lot of constraints on that work from home customer service representative.
Mm-hmm.
That to properly service that client, not just, like average call time considerations, but formulas for how many times per day, per hour, per number of customers you deal with.
Mm-hmm.
You can offer even a dead to rights credit or correction on a bill.
Mm-hmm.
That, effectively what we've already experienced with Suddenlink, just trying to manage our bill in terms of like, hi, we're not paying you that. Like, that's a ridiculous amount of money. It's a game of go fish.
Right.
Trying to blindly navigate a system in which you're not being told no because it's impossible, or no because it's unreasonable, or even no because, like it's a dead to rights situation. But you're being told no, or at least how it feels, because there's an arbitrary constraint on that customer service representative.
Right.
That they can't offer you that right now. They've hit their quota.
Mm-hmm.
Go fish, try another rep, see if they've got some money to throw at you.
Right.
In terms of like, renegotiating the contract.
Mm-hmm.
So every call to them has begun to feel like a game of go fish.
Right. And it's been a game of go fish sometimes. I mean, because, we have to stay above a certain board with the amount of the internet we use. And, sitting there and debating, and, they're giving it to $40 for you, but they'll give it to me for $170. They'll give it to someone else for $75. It's like price your product.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and, we understand having a new customer special. We do. At the same time, how it becomes unreasonable.
Right.
It can seriously become unreasonable.
Mm-hmm.
That, you're subsidizing, or you're not even subsidizing your new customers with your old customers.
Mm-hmm.
Like, not when the rate is triple or quadruple.
Right.
What
now,
your new
they also
customers
be hitting what? It's not going to be nice for them, but they may be hitting the monopoly stance too.
I think there are some serious concerns about that in West Virginia, yes.
Mm-hmm.
As in, we do not have a competitive market in most areas.
Right.
We have a segmented market in most areas.
Mm-hmm.
You have one functional telephone company.
Right.
You have one functional cable service. That they have cross-product.
Mm-hmm.
That you can get, internet from this one, and you can get, phone service from that one. It's still not a one-to-one, apples to apples.
Right.
Like, they're vastly different services. And there are still a lot of areas in which you have one or the other.
Right.
Functionally. I.e., Suddenlink or any cable company is not in that area, or the level of quality of that service, Frontier is especially guilty, is so bad as to be unreliable and unusable.
Right.
So you don't have a competition.
Exactly.
And for some people, it means they're effectively in a services desert.
Well, not only that, but here's the other problem with that is we are, as a state, are trying to encourage people from out of state to be remote workers in our state.
Yeah.
One, I'd like my check, Big Jim. You can go ahead and write it now, make it payable to Aeson Knight Inc., and we would love that.
Mm-hmm.
Right here in my hand today. I'm quicker than a tax man on collecting.
Yeah.
Two, you've got to fix these problems. You got to fix these issues. You've got to get yourself together.
Well, and that was low down on the list, but that was one of the issues I had with his, importing workers, work from home people. Was have you been in this state? Have you tried to work from home in this state? Legitimately work from home in this state, not just send some emails and watch a couple YouTube videos.
Mm-hmm.
Home internet.
Right.
Granted, he's in Lewisburg and Charleston. So I'm sure his offerings are much, much better. But try this in some parts of the state, and it's not going to work.
No. And what's
really
interesting is Manchin a couple months ago was asking for test shots because I do believe that he is building a case for the CDC, for the FCC to come after Suddenlink.
Yeah.
And Verizon. Because Verizon's in bankruptcy right now, so they're in trouble.
Yeah, then you have, again, you have Frontier.
Right.
I don't know that the PSC can do much more to them. They've raked them over the coals.
Well, I think they can actually go in and take them over because they are a public utility.
Yeah.
The same way that they took over the Page Water Company.
Mm-hmm.
And then sold it off to West Virginia Water. They can come in and take over any utility company, management and service.
Well, but I think their level of service problem hasn't quite hit that yet.
It's getting close.
For some areas.
Yeah.
Like, that's kind of the story of Suddenlink, and pretty much every single ISP that qualified for rural access grants.
Right.
Is they played with the numbers.
Right.
In terms of, like, we're sitting here in Oak Hill, we have 1 gig service to our home for internet.
Right.
Theoretically, I shouldn't, we don't complain about our internet that much.
Right.
Price, we've complained about. But, we have more than adequate service. And that's the game that these ISPs played, is they took areas with a high number of customers and massively upgraded our infrastructure, ignored those significantly rural areas, and because the averages were for the entire state, got away with it. Because it meant that our 1 gig or Charleston's 1 gig or Beckley's 1 gig all added up across the state, and the number of customers pulled that average to over 10 megabit per second. And that was the requirement to get the money and to keep it, was that the average customer has greater than 10 megabit per second.
Right.
Not really the proper language that should have been used there. I will take massive points away on that one from the FCC for how they handled it. Because the goal was to get the more rural areas of the state at 10 megabit per second or more.
Right.
But the methodology for evaluating that was so poorly written, it didn't happen.
Right. And it's ridiculous that it didn't happen. Now, I find interesting, though, is what we're going to see possibly come out of this. It might be, hello, Comcast. Roadrunner, why don't you run your way through West Virginia mountains? And let's see if you can catch that Cody here.
I don't know what we're going to end up with.
Oh,
I think we're going to end up with an eventual Public Utilities Commission takeover.
Yeah.
Like, that's already, like, I don't know when it'll be or how far out it'll be. I think that's eventually where it's going to end up, is because what we've effectively become is an area in which properly running a utility isn't profitable.
Right.
Not when you're trying to do minimum service levels for every customer.
Right.
Now, you sit there and play with the analytics of it, You can do it, but ultimately what has occurred is most of these utilities have pretty much created abandoned customers.
Right.
They either have service that is far, far less than it ought to be, or they don't have service at all.
Right. Of course, we're still waiting for SpaceX to get here. Like, I want to see what SpaceX does. I will be a beta tester happily if they can provide a service. If their numbers are looking right, Suddenlink may be, and all internet service providers may be in trouble.
Yeah. Well, that's the satellite-based internet, and I don't think it's SpaceX. I know it's same person.
Yeah, Elon Musk owns SpaceX, is using SpaceX.
Really?
Yep.
I didn't think that was what they went with. Because SpaceX, I thought, was their, commercial NASA.
Right. And it is, but they're the ones launching the satellites. They're about ready to break a record on satellite launches.
Yeah. So, yeah. Starlink. There we go.
Yep. I'm looking forward to them. Yeah. I'm hoping that the promises are the promises.
Oh, yeah. I think if they get anywhere close.
Right.
I know for a lot of West Virginia, it will be a massive improvement.
Right.
Like leagues and fathoms improvement. Right. And especially at the price point.
Right.
So that would be a certain thing. Now, Shannon made a comment. And sorry, we're just getting back to you, circling back on that. Apparently when she did tech support for Frontier, when they took over, it was a nightmare and only gotten worse from what she's heard.
Yep.
And honestly, I could totally lock in on that. If I remember right, before Frontier, it was CenturyLink.
No.
Or, not CenturyLink, Citizens.
Nope.
No, what do we have in between?
Well, before Frontier, we had CityNet.
Okay.
And before that, it was Verizon. Verizon left the state. Yeah, Verizon left the state, and Frontier took over the state.
Well, Citizens Link. SitLink, I remember I had an email address. That was our dial-up.
Right.
I feel like a disco ball should fall out of the ceiling for that one.
Oh, please. You haven't gotten that good with your special effects filming yet.
I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Way back when.
Yeah, I was right. It was Verizon before Frontier, and before Verizon, it was AT&T. Ma Bell had us.
Right. And I remember the telephone office in Princeton. No, we had GTE.
You had GTE.
General Telecom.
Yeah, no, we had AT&T.
Okay, no, again, Southern West Virginia is a whole different part of the state. But no, I remember GTE employees. Then we were SetLink, and then we were, I think, Frontier. I don't know if there was an in between.
No,
I was out of the state at the time.
Yeah,
but yeah, I just remember my father being so happy to get DSL. And
then Brenda worked for the phone part as C&P, then Bell Atlantic. Ma Bell, come on home. Then Verizon, then Frontier when she left.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see what happens. Hopefully the Public Service Commission will take it over. And
in with Citizens, etc. Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, Southern West Virginia, whole different part of the state. It's a totally different ball game.
Yep. But it's been nice. It's been a great evening. Banner, let's get your banner moving.
Alrighty, let me swap over there and get that up. And we do want to thank our baristas. We really, sorry, you had turned it on. We want to thank them for their support. Beverly Walker, Mika G, Kathy, Mary Winfield, Brenda Bryant, Ashley Giss, Shannon C, and Shannon D. If you'd like to learn more or support the show, please visit us at PCSPnetwork.com.
Yes, and check us out. We have a lot of fun things going on. Baristas, I hope you enjoyed your wallpapers. They are up on the Patreon site.
They are.
Yep. And we'll be moving with
favorite.
getting our rest of our stuff out. All right, guys. It's been a long day. It's been a great day. We will be seeing you later.
Good night.
Yes, we will definitely answer your question, Shannon.
Oh, we're taking your question. Cool.
You won't. No, she sent it on Patreon.
Okay. Sorry. Got it now.
Yep. So definitely we'll be taking care of that, Shannon. And until then, good night, y'all. We will see you on Friday.
Absolutely. Good night.
Night.
You can't tell me the deck is stacked.